My dude, this whole week I have been collecting my salty tears into this cup, into this plastic cup. I have been collecting my salty tears. Does that sound to you like a sign of mental stability? Take me at my word, my man. This past week has not been an easy one for devoted fans of Jordan Peterson like myself. This past week has been a week of revelations for me. I have discovered that the British government runs a network devoted to destroying Jordan Peterson. Why would they create a whole channel to destroy Jordan Peterson? And this channel is run by this devious and seductive MILF, Cathy Newman. Bro, she has been so unfair to the professor, so very unfair to the professor. It's almost like her cultural Marxism has blinded Cathy to the halo around Jordan Peterson, to the halo of wisdom that blesses us each and every day, and blesses us even more if we give Patreon donations and get the unlocked content. My dude, this interview she conducted with him, I would do interview with air quotes, but bro, I can't do air quotes. I have been so traumatized by the whole thing. Let me try. Air. The journalist, Cathy Newman, Professor Peterson. Cathy, I know who you are. I know who you are now. I remember you from high school. I remember I put this whole collage. I made this whole intricate blanket of love and our future babies that I gave to a girl I wanted to go out with during the prom. And she looked at me with these cold eyes, like the way you looked at the professor, Cathy. And then she said, "Thank you." And then I got a restraining order. I know your type, Cathy. I've learned a lot of things from that experience back in my school days, and not just about crafts and sewing, but also about the nature of women. Oh archetypes, I give you this gift of vape as a sacrifice. Oh sacred archetypes, how could you permit this injustice? I cry out to you with my autistic prayer. Oh archetypes, how could you make Cathy Newman so unfair to the professor who gives so much to the world, who gives so much of his soul? I will follow the professor and I will write a short email to Cathy Newsom. Look, I have a wireless keyboard. I'm not a complete failure in life, no matter what my mother says. I'll write something civilized to Cathy because this is what the professor would want. I will not threaten anything. I will not make any violence apparent. Dear Cathy Newsom, how do you feel about rape? I can't do it. I must cry out to the archetypes. Oh, sacred archetypes. Oh, sacred archetypes, please avenge my pain. Please avenge the hole in my heart. I cry out to you, archetypes, and I beckon you, mythological baby Jesus, who may or may not exist, depending on the level of analysis. Oh, mythical baby Jesus, please answer my prayers. Please summon the archetypes for punishment on BBC and the Queen of evil, Cathy Newsom. I see this is not working. I guess I should have I guess I should have chosen a different flavor of vape to offer to the archetypes, they have been silent toward my prayers. In that case, as a form of vengeance, I have no other way. I will have to summon the lobster, dude. I'll have to summon the lobster of vengeance, the alpha posture lobster. This is not easily done. Much like the mythical rabbis of old who have summoned the golem with their Kabbalah prayers, I will now summon the lobster. Where my homies at? Where my lobsters at? Where my lobsters at? Where my homies at? Where my lobsters at? Where my homies at? Where my lobsters at?
But I also think it's something our culture doesn't attend to. Like, you kind of have to remind your kids to stand up. You know, it takes a certain amount of conscious effort. But yeah, in that chapter, I talk a lot about lobsters, which I kind of have an affinity for lobsters, and because the short story is that when a lobster loses a fight, because they're fighting all the time for dominance, let's say, in their hierarchies, he kind of crunches down, so he looks smaller. When he wins a fight, he stretches out, looks bigger. And so he's signaling to other lobsters the tally of his victories, let's say. So if a lobster has won a fight, he's more likely to win the next fight than you would calculate from having a tally of all his previous defeats and victories. And if he loses a fight, then he's more likely to lose the next fight. So that's that Matthew principle at work. Okay, so you think, well, so what? So what does that have to do with anything? It's like, okay, here, part of the kicker is, well, the lobster runs on serotonin, neurochemical. And if the lobster loses, the serotonin levels go down, and if he wins, the serotonin levels go up. And when the serotonin levels go up, he stretches out, and he's a confident lobster. And one of the consequences of that is a lobster loses a battle, and you give him the equivalent of antidepressants, then he stretches out and he'll go fight again. So antidepressants work on lobsters. Right. And you think, well, who cares? It's like, no, you don't get it. We diverged from lobsters from an evolutionary perspective 350 million years ago, and it's the same circuit. It's absolutely unbelievable. And that shows you how deep inside you, how basic, how primordial that circuit is in you, that's sizing other people up and looking at where they fit in the hierarchy.
Now, my friends, you might have noticed how the lobster, immediately after emerging out of its old shell, has assumed that alpha male, the alpha lobster posture that Jordan Peterson recommends to all of us. You know, he just got very aggressive and very feisty. And you know why that is? Because a lobster is such a stupid fucking animal that it immediately perceived its own former fucking shell that it just emerged out of as a different lobster that was now threatening it. That's exactly what happened in that fucking little aquarium. That's exactly what fucking happened. And this is the kind of a stupid fucking insect of the sea that Jordan Peterson gives us as an example of some sort that should be relevant to our, that should be relevant to our lives. No matter how much fucking serotonin you pump into that stupid lobster, it's still going to be a retarded fucking insect. And you know what else is true? I've recently found this bit of trivia about lobsters online. There are many European countries that promote the humane treatment of lobsters, the humane killing of lobsters that, for example, prohibits from boiling them alive. And these same countries actually prohibit the cutting off the head of the lobster as a humane form of killing. You know why? Because when you cut off a lobster's head, it remains alive because its brain or its pathways are distributed throughout the body, so it is still alive without its fucking head. So now, this is why I disagree with equating lobsters and humans in any way. I mean, I've certainly heard many reports that I frankly believe of certain Jordan Peterson Patreon supporters whose brain nerves and their tiny brain stem is distributed throughout their bodies. So if you cut off their head, they're actually able to function for a little while and go on YouTube and type out YouTube comments supportive of Jordan Peterson before their body dies due to lack of nourishment. That certainly happens with many devotees of Jordan Peterson, but should really not be generalized to the rest of humanities, you know. So that's it about lobsters. But we're not fucking here to talk about lobsters. We always get digressed. I mean, the wisdom of fucking Jordan Peterson is so fucking vast that you can talk about this dumb shit forever. But we're not going to talk about this dumb shit forever. We're going to be talking about this stupid interview with Cathy Newman that the professor had. I could give a shit about this interview like I do about most of activities of Jordan Peterson, except for that one time he was fucking selling a $2,000 rug on Twitter. I was really excited about that one, and everything else I could give a shit about. But I'm just here to troll. And there's not much to actually troll about that interview in and of itself, because Jordan Peterson has conducted himself rather well. I mean, you could at this point surmise that I'm not a fucking fan of this fucking Canadian. But that interview went well for him. And the reason it went well is because it just was a stupid format with a journalist who, let's say, was not the sharpest crayon in the British broadcasting system. By and large, Jordan Peterson fans are a dumb herd of animals, and so many of them have only discovered the existence of BBC when their messiah first graced their studio with his presence. But actually, if you have watched BBC interviews before, as I have, and I've actually saw her interviews before, you know, because I guess I fucking have no social life. But anyway, I actually was aware of this woman before this whole thing happened. Is their style is kind of interview by trolling, where they try to be provocative at every point. And it's actually an annoying form of interview, because they just kind of like playing the piano, like an idiot playing the piano, hitting all keys. Well, that's not how you fucking play the piano. You focus on specific keys and make a fucking melody, dude. Well, there is no melody to these fucking interviews, because they just go from one thing to another in a scatterbrained way. And the good debate is actually when you focus on some weaknesses and specialize in them and grant your opponent some points, and you have an interesting debating fucking conversation. But this is not what happens on BBC. They just fucking go after every stupid point. And in this case, you know, when he turned it around on her, she was clearly fucking unprepared. She spent, you know, this interview fucking went on for half an hour, and she probably spent like half an hour researching Jordan Peterson, because it might be crazy, but there are plenty of people in the world, most of them, who don't give a shit about Jordan Peterson. And I assume, you know, she was one of them. They just told her this is some dude off of YouTube who doesn't like women, and then they gave her some research that was taken off of fucking Wikipedia, and that's what she went with. And she basically like more or less fell on her face. That being said, that interview is infinitely more interesting than any other interview I saw with Jordan Peterson on fucking YouTube. I mean, usually there's like Dave Rubin staring at Jordan Peterson like a fucking golden retriever with fucking brain damage on the verge of a coma, as Jordan Peterson just fucking talks about fucking lobsters and shrimp and whatever other fucking insects of the sea kind of wander into his stupid fucking head. That's what usually happens. He just comes there like a fucking messiah, and nobody watches that shit. I mean, the interview with Jordan Peterson had went on for fucking 3 hours with Dave Rubin, who did anything aside from sucking Peterson's balls. It has like under 1 million views, and motherfucker, I can guarantee you no more than like 100 people watch that shit till the end, watch all those fucking 3 hours. They themselves would have to be in a fucking autistic coma to watch this shit. Whereas in like in a nice 30-minute interview, we actually fucking got a lot of interesting exchanges between Cathy Newman and Jordan Peterson. And Jordan Peterson fucking prevailed, all right? He made some good points. If I didn't know what kind of an asshole he was outside, what kind of a rambling piece of shit he was outside of this interview, I would walk away from this interview with a good impression of him. He fucking won. He fucking prevailed. It was a good fucking interview. Yes, she interrupted him, but in the end, he got out his points and he got to talk about the fucking lobster at the end. It was a victory for Peterson. And in that sense, it's not a very interesting interview for me to consider. However, what is fucking interesting for me to consider is the reaction to this interview. I mean, yes, Cathy has gotten death threats or whatever and is now like fucking followed by security as a fucking Jordan Peterson fans are capable of inflicting some sort of damage, and you know, aside from yelling, clean your room and fucking throwing lobsters at you. No, but anyway, and Jordan Peterson himself has went on Twitter and, you know, gave the command to the herd to you know, to not harm poor Cathy. So yeah, this is one thing. But then it's like Cathy was welcome to the fucking autistic Thunderdome with this shit, because every piece of shit motherfucker on YouTube is now making videos about this interview, and not just making videos about this interview as in hey, you know, look at Peterson, you know, prevailing over feminism, all their usual kind of trite shit. No, they're analyzing poor Cathy. They're like, they develop this fucking pathetic fixation they develop on some certain women who, whether, you know, those women could be goofy and making stupid points, but the fixation is definitely on them. I've just recently watched an interview with Peterson where he was talking with this annoying kind of a lefty professor or whatever at some college in the United Kingdom. I mean, that guy was so pasty, the guy who was interviewing him. It was fucking unbelievable. If he was any pastier, he would fucking reflect light. But anyway, he was challenging him. He was being as obnoxious as Cathy, if you want to consider that behavior obnoxious. But there's no hate toward him. Nobody knows his name. That interview is completely fucking forgotten. But with Cathy, they really kind of fixated on this MILF appeal. So it's fucking, you know, the schizophrenic men's right advocate Stefan Molyneux got into the act. That fucking Dilbert creator who the fuck, you know, hope he drops dead. I don't fucking remember his name. Fucking Sargon of Sarkeesian has made like a fucking, I don't know, like an hour long video analyzing Cathy. I mean, what the fuck? And there are all these other little piece of shit YouTubers did as well. So that's kind of the more of an interesting aspect of it. Just the fact that this stupid interview has become such a fucking phenomenon. Well, anyway, dude, we're gonna listen to the man himself, to the big boss, to fucking Jordan fucking Peterson talk about this interview. I'll react to his comments, and then we'll fucking wrap this whole stupid fucking thing up.
But first, the talk of the day, man. Your interview with Channel 4. Cathy Newman. It started. I was watching this, and it was like a self-propelled train wreck. Just for half an hour, it just kept on going. It was quite fun. The memes that came out of it were really good. But I think yesterday or today, it took kind of a more joyless turn. But first, I want to ask you. We'll talk about the aftermath after. But first, how did you experience that interview? What happened there? What was going on there?
Well, there were lots of things going on, which is why people are watching it, right? I mean, there are lots of things going on at many levels of analysis all the time, and it's hard to determine which level of analysis you should focus on, especially when something complicated is happening. The way I experienced it was that I went into the Channel 4 studio, and I sat, and first in the green room, where everything was quite friendly. Cathy was being made up in there, and so we had a pleasant interchange, I would say. And then I was brought into a room where the interview took place with the cameras, and we spoke for 2 or 3 minutes before the cameras rolled, and she was pleasant and engaging, distracted a bit, but it's exactly what you'd expect, right? She's got her mind on many things. But then the cameras went on and she just was a completely different person instantly.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting. You know, it was interesting to me that she had both of those approaches so instantaneously at her disposal, you know. And so, of course, the first thing that entered my mind was, well, my eyebrows went up and I thought, okay, which of these two people is the real person, right?
Gee, it was so nice of Jordan Peterson to travel back in time and give an interview to 12-year-old Fareed Zakaria while wearing a fucking hipster outfit and a scarf. He probably traveled back in time with his magical Canadian fedora made out of the bones of archetypal alpha lobsters, but he couldn't show the magical fedora on the fucking camera back in time. Anyway, this is just so pathetic, man. There are no fucking levels of analysis here. It was a fucking typical BBC interview that went a little bit off the rails, and because of the pent-up blue ball rage of your supporters has become some sort of a phenomenon. That's all that fucking happens. There are no fucking levels of analysis. Cathy didn't give a shit about who you were. She barely researched you. She threw some questions your way, and you answered them well in an articulate manner. And you know what else, Peterson? Like, actually, you gave the impression in that video of somebody who lost his virginity before the age of 25, unlike many of your followers. You were kind of like a little bit flirty. You had a nice smile to Cathy. You know, you were alternatively like patronizing, like kind of reclining a little bit and laughing easily. And then you were, you know, kind of, you know, giving her serious answers with a little twinkle in your eye. You were like a sexy beast in that interview, Peterson. I wish I could play those parts of them right now, but I can't because fucking BBC blocked it and copyrighted it, and you know I can't upload it, which might be for the best because I fucking don't want to do the stupid video to begin with, and I would just ramble some more if I had these stupid excerpts, and then I'd have to watch the whole thing again and cut out the flirty Peterson and that shit. So anyway, yeah, so you were really a cool guy, bro. Like, I give you a fucking thumbs up on that fucking interview, but now you're just a whiny bitch. I mean, what the fuck are you talking about? Oh, she was so friendly in the fucking dressing room, and then she got so mean to you. Oh, yeah, it's almost like, you know, I was like talking with the doctor during the exam and we were having such fun, and then I was, you know, waiting for some papers in the reception area, and doctor just walked by almost like he's a fucking professional with a fucking job. What the fuck, Peterson? Why are you such a sensitive, whiny little emo bitch? What the fuck are you talking about it? There's no fucking levels of analysis. Everybody doesn't fucking like you. They might dislike you for good reasons, or they might dislike you for some vague lefty social justice reasons. But a lot of people don't like you, and there are even more people who don't know who the fuck you are. And every interaction with you is not some sort of a grandiose archetypal struggle. There is no great agenda. Nobody is sniping for your autistic army that they have no idea even exists. The world doesn't revolve around you. Only your fucking Patreon does. Only the people who are so pathetic little sheeple that they don't abandon you immediately when you try to fucking sell them a $2,000 rug on fucking Twitter with your fucking sacred symbol on it. Fucking piece of shit, Peterson. Fuck you, Peterson. Anyway, dude, listen, this channel is a religion of love. It's all fucking archetypes are welcome here. It's like, disregard any negative things I might have said about lobsters and other crustaceans and other insects of the sea. Who knows? Maybe there's a lot of things you can learn from lobsters. Sometimes I go to a fucking store and I see the few lobsters and I get real close. I get real close to their aquarium, and they whisper to me, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the channel.